Did you know that your new truck is dangerous? It is killing pedestrians at an alarming rate. We have a huge issue, and government's going to walk in, they're going to fix it. Hey, it's Tim, Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk. Let's unpack the story, give you some more details on what's going through my brain today and why it's maybe affecting you, the consumer, and why, if you're like me, you're going to be pissed off at the end of this video, because I generally am. So, every year or so, I get tagged in a post about the size of new trucks. Trucks have gotten bigger. I'm not arguing that at all. But how the size of the truck is now creating a real danger. It's causing a real issue. It's causing pedestrians to die at an alarming rate. News item came through today that the Consumer Reports advocacy group, if I can speak, the news came through today that Consumer Reports is advocating that the National Highway Traffic. Okay, so what's the news today? Consumer Reports just put out a press release where they are advocating that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration adopts a rule that's going to change the makeup of the design of trucks and require them to be more safe for the pedestrians because trucks are obviously the issue, and trucks the size of them is killing pedestrians. Okay, so Consumer Reports got a lot to say about this, and I'm going to pick on them a little bit, but I'm also going to show you something that happened New York Times put out, and we'll discuss more about my thoughts on this. And this is not just Consumer Reports. I've seen this time and time again in the media, and again, I get tagged on posts on this all the time to defend trucks, defend their size, because I'm an idiot, I'm a hick out here in the country, and I don't know what I'm talking about. So here we go: the hidden danger of pickup trucks. This is a headline they put out, and it has been a headline in different places. Pickups are getting larger and becoming a hazard to pedestrians and drivers of smaller vehicles. That tells a story of a lady who crossed the street, and unfortunately, she got hit by a truck. The guy didn't see her, and she ended up passing away. It's a sad story. Not having an issue with that. But back then, they're asking New York legislature, which happened in New York State, lower speed limits in urban areas and require warnings on larger vehicles at point of sale that detail the risks they pose to others on the road. So when you're going to buy a vehicle in New York, this I don't think obviously went into effect, but they wanted you to have a warning that said this vehicle causes details of risks that this vehicle poses to others on the road. He says, I truly believe that my mother would have had a greater chance of survival had she not been struck by such a large vehicle. She says, heart goes out to you. No argument there. So here's what Consumer Reports did. They went and found a 2020 Ram 1500, and they decided to see how much blind spot there is in the front of the truck. And in their study, they found some trucks had front blind spots 11 feet longer than those in some sedans and 7 feet longer than in many popular SUVs. And so they're saying this is the problem right here. This photo is that if you're driving one of these trucks, you cannot see that much well in front of you, which means you can hit and kill pedestrians. And that is the primary problem. And they talked about the hood of the Gladiator being so tall and how high. If you're over 4,000 pounds, you're having lots of additional speed and you're creating these problems. So, okay. That's the argument. I've heard this argument by many different outlets and people over the years. And so they commented on this NTSA rule that's supposed to improve the likelihood of surviving a crash if you're a pedestrian. So I'm going to get that rule, but let me explain what the thinking here is. And let me get to the rule, then I'll explain the thinking. So the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, now this is the government agency, and they control lots of regulation that automakers have to build vehicles towards. Okay. So they proposed back in September of 2024 a rule to reduce fatalities and serious injuries among pedestrians struck by vehicles. The proposed rule would establish a new federal motor vehicle safety standard, FMVSS, and this applies to new vehicles. I see it all the time. I've read through some of the rules as well. It requires new passenger vehicles designed to reduce the risk of a serious to fatal injuries in child and pedestrian adult crashes. So in 2022, 88% of pedestrian fatalities occurred in single vehicle crashes. The proposed rule would apply to passenger vehicles with a gross vehicle weight rating of 10,000 pounds or less. So that is I think it goes all the way to 1 ton and less. So 3/4 ton for sure, half ton for sure. This would include multi-purpose vehicles, trucks, SUVs, and crossover vans. Data show that fatalities of pedestrians struck in front of a vehicle are most common for multi-purpose passenger vehicles, 49%, followed by 37% in 2022. We have a crisis on roadway deaths. It's even worse among vulnerable road users like pedestrians. Between 2013 and 2022, pedestrian fatalities increased 57% from 4,800 to 7,600, 7,500, about roughly. The proposed rule would ensure that vehicles will be designed to protect those outside the vehicle, inside and outside, from serious injury and death. Okay, the proposed rule would establish test procedures. This is the big deal. Test procedures simulating a head-to-hood impact and performance requirements to minimize the risk of a head injury. NTSA estimates the new standard would save 67 lives a year. 67. That's it. Out of the growth of almost 2,000, over 2,000. The test procedure would also include use of human-like head forms to measure the head-to-height impact. The head forms proposes to use in testing new standard represented a diverse range of pedestrians from a small child to an adult. So they're also looking at this to harmonize U.S. vehicle regulations globally to promote vehicle safety. That's the good part of that. We need to make sure that globally we have the same standard everybody else has, and would actually change some of the rules about importing vehicles. We had more of the safety standards across all the vehicles in the global. So that I would agree with. The rest of the stuff I don't agree with. And let's understand here what's going on, and here's why my issue is. The idea here is if you're in an accident and say I'm walking and I get hit like this, I need to have a way for my head to hit the hood and not die. Okay? So if you have a big tall hood and height, your head's probably going to hit the grill and not go on top of the hood. The idea here, it goes on top of the hood. Now, why do I know this stuff? Well, Australia has been trying to do this for several years, and actually in London, they've been trying to do this. Their focus was doing away with bull bars. Let me pull up a bull bar for you. So, truck with bull bar, because I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. I call them in Australia, they call them kangaroo bars. Here in the United States, we kind of call them bull bars. And the idea with a bull bar is that if you hit a deer in my neck of the woods, we have lots of deer. Also, reading stories, North Carolina, urban area in North Carolina have tons of deer too. So if you hit a deer, the deer doesn't destroy your truck. However, with you have this sitting out of the vehicle, it pushes that pedestrian's head even further away. The real ones that are having a problem are with the Australian. They have the truck trains. I'm probably going to use the word wrong, but they have semis that go through the outback that are connected together. And they have bull bars that are 4 or 5 rungs tall. That's for kangaroos. They call them rhubars because they have so many kangaroos. They're causing so much damage to trucking. Well, here's a problem. You get that same truck with that really strong metal going straight up and down. That's 4 to 5 links tall, which is as tall as I am, 5'7", as tall as I am. On the front of the truck, you drive around downtown Melbourne or someplace in Australia, and you hit somebody, you hit a pedestrian. The pedestrian's dead. Dead. There's no argument there. So the idea here is that automakers are saying, or not automakers, excuse me, NHTSA is saying, well, we have a real issue. Our issue is trucks have gotten so high, so people are instead of being up here and going head over the hood, they are not surviving that because trucks are getting high, you're smashing it, and that's the real issue. Not so fast. That's what I tell everybody. Slow down. Just because it's causation doesn't mean correlation. That's what they're saying. Or correlation doesn't mean causation. Either way. Just because trucks have gotten taller doesn't mean they're killing more pedestrians. It doesn't mean that. But every person I talk to seems like they miss a few more details. Such as the New York Times. Thank you, New York Times. Did a wonderful story on pedestrian deaths. So they pinned the surging road deaths on phones, drugs, and poor lighting. Anybody who's driven around any major city in the past 5 years understands the distractions happen. People talking on the phone, walking on the road. People jaywalking because they feel like they have a right to do that. They're on their phone talking about stuff. Or downtown New York City or LA or whatever. Homeless populations have grown. More people are on drugs. They're whacked out. They're walking where they want to walk to. They get hit. They die. But that counts as the big bad truck is too big, that person was survived. Oh, BS. So here's what they said. The New York Times looked into that, and they said if the U.S. has made much progress reducing vehicle crashes in other high-income countries over the past 2 decades, about 225,000 fewer Americans would die every year. So it's interesting. The math is so much different than what NTSA says. NTSA is like, oh, it's about 5,000, whatever. So the U.S. data death rate for motor vehicles fell steadily for almost 100 years before, around a decade ago, suddenly rising. About a decade ago, 2014 started rising. Why the Times asked, are more Americans dying in car accidents even as automakers keep introducing more advanced safe technology? Like, let's see, I don't know, front pedestrian detection equipment, automatic emergency braking that sees the pedestrian, it slams on the brakes. But no, the traffic death or the pedestrian deaths keep climbing. Even with all this new technology, they're mandating vehicles, making your truck more expensive. Many blame the increasing size of cars on American roads. A recent study by the insurance industry found that tall, blocky vehicle designs are more deadly to pedestrians. Another found that SUVs and pickups are more likely to kill pedestrians, lending some weight to the size argument. But the Times noted, this is important, American cars were relatively large even before 2009, and at the rate of which new cars replace existing ones is slow. So why did it 2013 something dramatically change? If you look at 3/4 ton today versus 2009, it's not dramatically that much different. It's not like going from a Ford Maverick to a semi truck. The sizes aren't that different. So what is really going on? Looking for an answer, they focus on one specific aspect of the problem. Nearly all of the rise in pedestrian deaths is at night. So the rise in these deaths, the numbers they put out are actually the 57% increase are at night. So what is going on at night that's causing these issues? They found, first of all, smartphones. Duh. We all know this. Any truck guy understands this. You drive around, we see all the time somebody on their phone, they're not paying attention, they swerve in a lane, or they're driving on the smartphone. That's the worst. Distracted driving is terrible. You got guys walking down the streets with talking on phones, not paying attention to what's going on. So that's going to be a big rise. Since 2013, or past decade, what's happened? Cell phone use has gone dramatic. We all have phones now. I'm recording this video on a phone. We all have phones. So why has that not happened in most wealthy countries? What would be unique to the United States? Because the reports suggest we only need one hand to drive. Fewer than 2% of new cars sold in the United States are equipped with manual transmissions. In Europe, the Times says they'll make about 70 to 75% of the cars on the road. That's a huge point. I have a 62 C10. It had a manual transmission. You called me. I didn't answer my phone driving. First of all, I couldn't hear you because it's so loud. Secondly, I cannot use my phone and drive a stick at the same time. I have two hands. Hand on the wheel, hand on the stick. Not going to happen. So, yeah, in Europe, people drive more manual transmissions. So you cannot be on the phone. You have to be more engaged with driving. Now, as we know, and every truck guy I know is going to agree to this, is that with automatic transmission and one hand on the wheel, you can talk and do. We can do a lot more distracted driving is more prevalent because of that. Impaired but not drunk driving. The peak in road deaths also overlaps the rise of opiates and legalization of recreational marijuana. Yeah, that's what happened the last 10 years. New York Times explains that periodic federal roadside surveys, last updated in 2013-2014, have found declining alcohol use by drivers and a rising share of testing positive for drugs. Other federal studies conflict with the data. A NTSA study recently found that deaths caused by drunk drivers has risen in 36 states in recent years. Federal law will require anti-drunk driving technology in all new cars sold by 2026. That is still on hold, I believe. I reported on that story as well. The last thing, lack of sidewalks and streetlights. Finally, the Times suggests Americans may simply be moving to areas that aren't well equipped to protect pedestrians at night. Many areas have had poor pedestrian safety records going back for decades, especially metro areas in Florida, Texas, and Arizona have also seen the greatest recent population growth. Roads with higher speed limits and fewer sidewalks, crosswalks, and streetlights are a common outside of cities. I barely have any in my city. I don't know about you guys, but I'm sorry, something in my view went flying across my field out there. But there's not very many streetlights where I'm at. I have no sidewalk outside my house. It's 45 miles an hour on that road, no sidewalk. I swear somebody's gonna get hit. Bicycle guy's gonna get hit. Somebody walking with kids gonna get hit. My kids can't walk home from school because there's no sidewalk because I refuse to let them walk on the busy road. So pedestrian deaths over the last 20 years have declined in downtown areas and increased in the suburbs. More people are moving to the suburbs, and that's causing the issue. The final thing I would add to this conversation that doesn't ever get added is look at the makeup of vehicles on the road today. The majority of those vehicles are trucks and SUVs. So if the majority of vehicles are trucks and SUVs, it's easy to say that trucks and SUVs are causing more accidents because by percentage, there's more of them. Go downtown, not go down, go to Walmart, go to Target, wherever. Sit outside and count how many sedans there are versus trucks and SUVs. And then say if you take 100 vehicles, trucks, SUVs, whatever, and you said 80 of them causing accidents, the odds are high that out of those 80, you're going to have a higher percentage of trucks, SUVs, just because of the popularity of those. Now, automakers have done a lot of stuff in the last decade or so. Like I pointed out, front pedestrian detection, front cameras, rear cameras, blind spot monitoring. Blind spot monitoring for bicycle detection. Lexus did that 2 years ago. That's a new one. They said, if you're riding the bicycle down, you're going past the passenger side windows, the door won't open because people aren't looking back to open the door. There's open the door and knocking people off bikes. And I rode a bike a lot about 15, 20 years ago, and I would appreciate that because I had some really rare, really scary situations where I probably might have died. You have that going on. You have these more safety standards, but now we want to get this place where we're going to make the hood have different materials, or we're going to have more sensing and stuff somehow to make a pedestrian survive differently. No, they want to make vehicles smaller. What I find hilarious with this whole conversation is the same smart people that are saying, well, trucks are too big, we got to make it smaller, we're killing pedestrians, are the same people that caused the issue. What I mean by that was when CAFE was redone, when Obama was in office and CAFE was redone, and he had some really pie in the sky standards for fuel economy, which is fine. Every president comes in and does something in CAFE and always set different numbers. And, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. I like not having a 6 mile per gallon truck anymore. I'm a fan of that. However, the one critical mistake they made, is they started basing fuel economy, average vehicle fuel economy, on vehicle footprint, the size of the vehicle. The long and short of this is the bigger the vehicle you have, the less stringent the requirements are to have less emissions and better fuel economy. Emissions and fuel economy kind of go together a little bit hand in hand. So they created a problem. If they had said we're going to leave it alone and trucks will just get their own thing and SUVs their own thing, you wouldn't see automakers making trucks bigger. You wouldn't see consumers buying bigger trucks because they wouldn't have to. The unintended consequence of that legislation was larger vehicles, CAFE, bigger footprint, so we have bigger vehicles. And then you see the trends, consumer trends, right? So SEMA show took off about 10, 15 years ago. Everything's lifted. Everything's got big 35-inch tires. Look at what automakers are building. They're building lifted trucks with tires because consumers are doing that already. So that trend is going as well. So it just, to me, we have a trend in this country towards larger trucks. That doesn't mean they're causing more deaths. Cell phone, drugs, liquor, snorts. I was trying to think about how to do liquor. That stuff's all causing problems. Street lamps, not enough sidewalks, larger population growth has come along. Automakers are doing what they can to mitigate pedestrian deaths. Nobody wants to kill somebody, but you can't just blame the truck. And I just find it just frustrating that people go to the easy answer and don't see the whole picture. So we got for you on this topic. Make sure you check out the videos out over here, website down below as well, pickuptrucktalk.com. As always, thanks for watching. I will see you down the road.